All right, so you made this documentary. It's called. Wait, get now. I want to say this too shall pass because it's the Buddhist thing, but it's not that.
It's all things must pass.
All things must pass.
Yes.
And there's significance to that I won't spoil. Although I will say this documentary, this will sound like a lack of endorsement, but really it's the remarkable thing about this documentary. There are no twists in this story.
No, you know how all the stores close. Literally all.
And you know why?
Yeah,
I mean, they could guess why, and that okay, this is a place that started right when they started selling records, and then 1963 happens. The Beach Boys become a thing. The Beatles become a thing. The single culture goes to an album culture, and this place explodes. And but yeah, I know that wasn't a question.
No.
And they also can guess that. Then guess what? Guess why it all ends. But that doesn't make it at all uninteresting to like trace every step of this.
Well, no, and that is actually sort of the first. That was the thing that interested me to start making it. Is I found out that this guy Russ Solomon, who founded Tower Records, he started selling used 78s from his father's drugstore in 1939, 41. It's he's a little bit hazy with those dates. But that's how he started selling records. And then by the time that Tower Records closed its doors, he had 192 stores around the world. And so that little factoid got me supremely interested in just the overall arc of the company. And I got lost in the most mundane minutia of Tower Records and all of the little fascinating things from a historical perspective that I find to be really interesting. The fact that he opens up the true Tower Records in 1960. He spends 8 years kind of perfecting it, opening 3 stores in Sacramento, and then basically he goes into San Francisco to go sleep with some woman who works at his barber shop.
Oh yeah, that story is so interesting.
The story is incredible. It's incredible, and he totally glides over in the documentary the fact that he's married with a kid. But he doesn't mention that at all, even though we have footage of him with his son talking about how his wife was the bookkeeper at the pharmacy. But anyway.
I thought that was such a charming story.
It is a charming story, though. It is a charming story. He goes to San Francisco, has this great night with this lady, and then wakes up super hungover and finds this location in San Francisco and decides he wants to open up a Tower Records. He opens up in March of '68, right before San Francisco is invaded by hundreds of thousands of dirty hippies from all over the world. And that ends up being the Summer of Love, and it becomes the most popular store in all of San Francisco.
Right.
And so I found all of these little things like that supremely fascinating. And I think a lot of people who kind of know some of the history of that can go into it thinking, oh, it's just going to be a documentary of dates and places and historical context and all that stuff, and oh, we miss vinyl, da-da-da-da-da. But really what the story is about Russ and this group of people that worked at Tower that ended up working at this place for 30 plus years and really became like a family. As cheesy as that may sound, they became a family and worked together and had a fucking blast going around the world working in the music business. And they get married, they get divorced, they have children, they have so much fun, and then at the end of it, they all have to fire each other.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's crazy. It reminded me of like a documentary about Ireland. It was like that whole horrible the Michael Collins era of because it turns into.
It ends up becoming this.
They had to do more than fire each other. But.
No, yeah, but I mean, it ends up becoming this other journey that I don't think many people think of, and we were talking about this earlier. I think. For a large group of people relatively our age, I think we're all cool. Yeah. I think for people relatively our age, if they were even just a sort of casual music fan, they would just think of Tower as the place that was everywhere and sold overpriced CDs.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned that backstage, and that because that is part of the story is that all of a sudden Best Buy, Target, everybody starts being able to sell CDs for $10 a CD, which is how much it costs to. Buy them and put them out on the shelf, and they're just like, we don't give a shit. If you buy your Britney Spears here, you'll buy more milk. And then the Tower Records across the street is like, we have to sell these for $20 or we're going to go out of business.
Yeah.
And what's hard to even for me to wrap my head around, and I'm sure therefore for these little profligate fucks,
I was going to say whippersnappers, but that works too.
Is that before the internet, which I can barely remember now, but it was like, imagine, you mentioned the Haight-Ashbury movement, so imagine, like, there's no internet. The newspaper is filled with lies. There is no, short of smoke signals or like, just hanging out in a drum circle or something. Like, there's not really a hotbed of like kind of countercultural or even just straight cultural like check-in points. Yeah. And to have these giant record stores keep going up, and that's why there ended up being 192 of them, is because everywhere that they were never in our Wisconsin. They made it to they had like 35 of them in Japan before they had one in New York, but they never, and it almost seems to have to do with that kind of cosmopolitan need at that time, because the same technology that ended up killing records in general would also supplant the need for, I don't know, the equivalent of barn raising among people who want to care about something other than what Nixon is telling them or something.
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, like, what was really, I found to be...
I resent that sound. I just, I think
guys, Nixon was a bad dude. I think we've established that.
He's almost famous for it.
That when you come in, we've got serious issues.
No, like the thing that I want to. I mean, there are a lot of things that I love about the overall story with Tower, but the thing that I found to be most insightful and also really inspiring was the fact that, sure, it ended when there were 192 stores, and there are a lot of reasons why Tower ended. It's not just the, Aaron Sorkin's simple answer of like, oh, Napster killed it. Do you know what I mean? It's not that at all. And we spend a large portion of the film actually really discussing what it was that actually killed Tower.
Which I found fascinating, not to interrupt you, but that is...
because that's the thing that I find really interesting, because I always just assume, like everyone else, like, oh, the internet came and it just changed everything.
And no one could control it at all. However, as we all know, Apple, which made computers and phones, decided to become the music industry.
Yeah.
They made that decision, and Tower at the time had a website, and it's revealed at one point, at that exact moment, their website was on AOL, and it was like this little like rinky-dink website, and it was just like they could only be so progressive for so long.
Exactly.
You can go from LPs to CDs, but you can't then also you can't keep juggling those chainsaws.
No, and there's so much new technology that ends up sort of coming up, and Tower was one of these places where they really prided themselves on trying. It was not a company that was run from the top down. It wasn't Russ Solomon saying, here is how you do this stuff, go make me rich. It was, here's the keys to the store, stock what you want, stock what you think people are going to like.
Hide the Coke when the cops come by.
Decorate it however you want. Just don't show up drunk or high, and if you do, then go home. And don't fuck me over. And that was how the company ran.
And it worked for 30 years, and it was it's like a sort of model of the souls in that movie, who more than one of them does that awesome documentary thing, which is what I go to documentaries for, where they're talking about something that seems innocuous and then their throat catches because those souls are they're couching it as a cautionary tale. Oh, we put ourselves out of business by not seeing MP3 coming or something like that. But the real story is that it was an actual successful demonstration of really non-corporate, anarchic, a small business taken to a global level, with God knows how many employees, including their newsletter and all this stuff. It was like they had one accountant practically the entire time, and they didn't need to. There's no necessary need to all of a sudden like take your stock public and start being beholden to a bunch of things and mutual funds and gubbity booby doo. It was just a bunch of people that couldn't get jobs anywhere else, and they liked selling records, and they kept growing and growing and growing that way.
And they just kept going, and they would just constantly always be in that right place at the right time. And as much as they would have the big stores in the, like Los Angeles, San Francisco, eventually New York, and then you get into the Chicagos, the New Orleans, and stuff like that. They would also have small stores in Stockton. And sort of those off the beat, sort of, off the beaten path type places where not a lot was going on culturally, or, the places where, the bigger bands would not stop to play. Do you know what I mean? And so they really had a mentality which was, we want to be that place wherever we are, where it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter what you're into. You can come in, you can hang out, and it doesn't even matter if you have money. We will not bother you unless you want to be bothered, unless you piss us off. And you can hang out for as long as you want. And if you don't leave with, a record, that's fine. Maybe you'll come back, and then the next time you'll buy something. And then maybe when you buy something, maybe you'll be open to hearing some of our suggestions, and then you'll leave with 14 different records.
Yeah, one thing I thought was interesting about that, by the way, was that I never knew was the album culture plus the CD culture became you can't be experimental about your music consuming anymore.
Yeah.
When you could just pay $3 for a piece of black plastic that was like, it was like you were more incentivized to kind of leave there with a big box full of stuff.
Totally.
And a good 10% of it, as when you go to the library, might have been like shit you might never listen to, but then you do listen to it, totally. And you're like, now I'm into Aretha Franklin or something, and then that turns into, holy shit, I only have so much allowance, and Britney Spears doesn't have any singles out on CD.
Well, and that ended up being the most fascinating nugget. When I asked Russ, I said, if you had to blame everything on something else besides what you did, I said, what would it be? Would it be Napster? Would it be, poor management? What would it be? And he actually said the biggest, in his opinion, the biggest mistake was they stopped selling singles. Now, if you think about this, and I don't want to get too boring here, but anyone here remember buying cassette singles?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Right. That's how you started your addiction to buying music. Whether you know it or not, that's how it started. Just that small little hit first, and then next thing you know, you're going into that store and you're buying maybe more singles, or maybe you're buying the full albums. Eventually at some point it's the full cassettes, full CDs, whatever. Once they stopped selling singles, they lost an entire generation of kids, and I know this because I'm that age. I was that age. I remember when they stopped selling CDs.
But you weren't choosing between going to Tower Records and downloading an MP3.
No, but here's the thing. I remember when they stopped selling singles, but at that point I was like, I love music so much. I'll buy CDs. I'll still do it.
You just couldn't buy as many.
I just couldn't buy as many, but I'll still do it.
And you had to be very careful about your choices, so you're gonna flatten out.
But you're gonna lose an entire generation of kids, even going into a store. And once you do that, you lose an entire generation of future customers. And that generation of kids all were in college when Napster was released.
Yeah, they had no loyalty to anything.
They had
anyway.
no loyalty anyways.
And I think they're being too hard on themselves. Honestly, I don't think if they had sold singles, I don't think they could have competed with Napster. But
it's easier to compete. A small single that costs, I don't know, maybe $1, $2. That's easier to compete with than completely free.
Logically, technically, it's there. But I also think that obviously without the actual I cannot put on pants.
True.
They would have had to have a Netflix visionary idea in addition to already having the visionary idea of being Tower Records.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a beautiful bell curve, this beautiful trajectory of all things have to come to an end. I mean, you don't want this thing to become Disney or any other. It's this beautiful bell curve that lasts an entire generation and traces the evolution of music. And it is a bummer. And in the end, the sad, it's this is how it ends. Mm-hmm. It never ends really great. It's not like a Soylent Green euthanasia chamber. It's like the jaws of capitalism and the loans being defaulted and the people being brought in and having to fire each other and all that stuff. But let's bring things to a positive note because. But there is one more reason to watch this movie. If you get a chance to see it,
it's out on Friday. I should mention.
Yeah, you
because I'm realizing we're talking about a movie that we've seen. None of you have seen this.
Right. Oh yeah,
So
it's
you
coming
can
out.
see it on Friday.
No, this
It'll be playing
podcast
at
is
the
big
ArcLight
business.
in L.A. in the Village East.
There's a
Cinema.
guy. There's a guy in the movie. You have to watch it alone for the most amazing mustache I've ever seen.
Yes.
Mark Vidicic.
Mark Vidicic, yeah.
So in normal time, because they're all like old and talking about the memories of it, he's got a regular Sam Elliott. There's nothing regular about a Sam Elliott mustache, but it's like
It's
like,
special.
okay, it's big, it's a brush, whatever. But then you see him in photographs, and it's like I've never seen a mustache like this. It looks to me, if you just told somebody, yeah, somebody took a duct tape width strip of hair and put it right over his mouth like a hostage.
Yeah.
That's what his mustache looks like. It just doesn't look. It looks like something happened, like something flew across a room and
I'm
splattered.
so glad that you've picked up on Vidicic's mustache because we've taken this movie out to a bunch of different film festivals, and we always get, you get super nervous. Like, it's funny. I've sat through horrible, shitty things that I've acted in and been totally fine. Like, no problem. I don't care how, like, it plays. It's just sort of like, whatever. But when it's your movie that you've, like, fucking, like, put everything into, all of a sudden, every noise that you hear while the movie is screening is of the utmost importance. And we have these, like, little moments in the film where I can tell if an audience is with us or if they're just not. And luckily, that mustache is the fucking that's the dividing line. Like,
It really looks like, you know what it looks exactly like to me? His mustache in the photographs. Being from the Midwest, like the Euro restaurants there are. I miss them because it's like they had the rotisserie, and you just carve off the big greasy strips of jagged lamb meat, just giant long ruler length strips of serrated edge lamb meat, and just lay them in a pita. And like if I don't ask for anything else, just do that, and I'm angry at myself. Just that. It looks like a piece of Euro meat, like was on a ceiling fan after a party, and he came in and was like, "Hey guys, I have a good idea about a record industry." And it just went went over his lips though, like centered on his lips. That's the weird thing about his mustache is it looks like he's like a weird part of a weird freedom of speech demonstration.
But you got to understand that we specifically cut it this way because we have this old photo of him. And you see this old photo, and it's basically you just hear his voice saying like, "Oh, well, basically describing the first time he walked into Tower Records and got a job." And we have this old black and white photo, and everyone starts chuckling at the mustache. Like everyone, like I've heard people go like, "Oh, wow!" Like, it's an audible thing, like not just a gasp, but like words as well. Like, "Oh, Jesus!" Not as detailed as lamb off of a fucking gyro placed on a pita with hummus and the whole thing, but close to it. And then the next shot is him today.
Right.
And he still has the fucking mustache.
Yeah.
And then people lose their shit.
Right.
They go, he still has it.
Yeah, he did.
Oh my God.
Well, he kind of refined it though, because back then it was like, oh, someone ran over a centipede in like, and I don't know why it ended up on your mouth, like why on the center of your lips. Like he clearly sensed those days had children or wives that said like, you gotta clear out an area. The way I recognize people is 2 dots and a slit. Yeah. Steven Spielberg definition, they just hit the gray alien triangulation. 2 dots and a slit, or it's not a person. And you got 2 dots and a fucking just Euro.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right. So
you'll see.
I'd like you to
and
meet,
when you go, please promise me when you see that photo, go, oh, when you see the black and white photo, and then when you see it out live, if someone could just go, oh shit,
yeah,
just for my own person, I would love it if someone did that.
Truly worth the price of admission, honestly, to see the mustache.
Yeah.
Like you'll love it.